We'll call our meeting to order. I think the first thing we'll have is we'll have Amy kind of give a recap on what we had for remaining items. Amy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think also you're going to be receiving a list to summarize what those remaining items are to make it a little easier. And if we have missed anything, please let us know. There are some additional items that were not included but were brought up early last week that have been added. Also in front of you, you should have a draft list of what we show as any changes that you made during your meetings last Monday and Tuesday. Certainly if you have any questions or that is not, we did not capture your intent, we're happy to walk through those again. But Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you want me to walk through each of these items or have staff start to go through the remaining items list.
You know, if you don't mind, maybe we just a quick overview through the items.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. So on the draft shorthand list for fiscal year 2021, for the Board of Healing Arts, you added $14,120, all from special revenue funds and 1 FTE positions for HB 2066. For the Attorney General, you added $400,000, all from the Scrap Metal Theft Reduction Fee Fund. This was the expenditure side for the funding that was included in HB 2007. For the Department of Administration, you adopted GBA number 3, item 4, to add $4 million all SGF for costs related to the Securities Act fee fund lawsuit. For the Kansas Lottery, you adopted GBA number 3, item 2, to add $8.7 million from special revenue funds to adopt the spring consensus revenue estimate. For KDHE Health, you adopted GBA number 3, item 1, to delete $23 million, including $139 million SGF for the spring human services consensus caseload. For the Department for Aging and Disability Services, you adopted GBA number 3, item 1, to delete $110.5 million, including $47.2 million SGF to adopt the spring human services consensus caseload estimate. For the Department for Children and Families, you adopted GBA number 3, item 1, to delete $7.5 million, including $5.9 million SGF for the spring human services consensus caseload. For the Board of Regents, you added language to provide the Career Technical Education Tuition Fund. This, as you'll recall, modified and clarified the language that included those pursuing a high school equivalency credential. For the Department of Transportation, you adopted GBA number 3, item 10, to add language authorizing off-cycle payment from the County Equalization and Adjustment Fund. On page 2, you see the beginning of fiscal year 2022. For the Behavioral Sciences Regulatory Board, you added $22,850, all from special revenue funds, and a half FTE position for a licensing specialist related to HB 2066. Also related to HB 2066 was the Board of Healing Arts, where you added $48,485 from special revenue funds and 1 FTE position. For the Board of Mortuary Arts, you adopted GBA number 3, item 13, to add $65,000, all from special revenue funds for a temporary funeral home inspector. For the Board of Pharmacy, you added $43,250, all from special revenue funds and a 0.5 FTE position related to HB 2066. In addition, you appropriated a no-limit prescription monitoring program fund upon passage of HB 2079. For the Legislature, you added $25,000, all from the State General Fund for the CSG conference being held in Wichita. And you added language creating an interim study for child support enforcement and collections upon approval of the Legislative Coordinating Council. For the Attorney General, you added $97,077 all SGF and 1 FTE position for a Kansas Elder and Dependent Abuse Team Coordinator related to HB 2114. In addition, you added $89,128 all SGF for salaries and wages to operate the Charitable Organizations and Solicitations Act contained in HB 2079. For the State Treasurer, you adopted GBA number 3, item 3, to add $451,000, all from the Unclaimed Property Expense Fund to replace the Unclaimed Property Production System. You also added $46,000 from the State Treasurer Operating Fund and a half FTE position for SB 88. And you added $53,000 from the State Treasurer Operating Fund and one FTE position for SB 86 related to the Economic Recovery Loan Deposit Program. At the top of page 3, for the Insurance Department, you adopted GBA number 3, item 4, to add $700,000 for costs related to the Securities Act fee fund lawsuit, subject to the resolution and settlement agreement being reached between parties. For the Board of Indigent Defense Services, you added language limiting the hourly rate for assigned counsel to $100 per hour contingent upon 2363 not being signed into law. For the Kansas Lottery, you adopted GBA number 3, item 2, and added $836,000 from special revenue funds to adopt the spring consensus revenue estimate. For the Department of Commerce, you added $94,300, all from the EDIF fund, to implement Senate sub for 2196. And you deleted $48,000 from the transfer of the EDIF to the State General Fund. And if you'll recall, those two items are connected, so you're decreasing the amount being transferred back from the EDIF to the State General Fund. On the Commission on Veterans Affairs, you adopted GBA number 3, item 8, to add $259,000 all SGF for travel expenditures. For the Department of Health and Environment Health, you added $183,680 SGF for the Rural Emergency Hospital Act and Senate sub for HB 2208. You added $100,000 all SGF for the Rural Hospital Innovation Grant Program contained in Senate sub for HB 2208. You adopted GBA number 3, item 1, to delete $96 million, including $56 million SGF for the Spring Human Services Consensus Caseload Estimate. You adopted GBA number 3, item 6, to add $180,000 all SGF for the State Loan Repayment Program. And you adopted GBA number 3, item 7, to add $10.1 million all SGF for the Children's Health Insurance Program. For the Department for Aging and Disability Services, you added $3 million all SGF for the operational costs of the 988 crisis hotline. You added $2.7 million, including $1.2 million SGF and 10 FTE positions for the Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinic funding and certification. You adopted GBA number 3, item 1, to delete funding for these $169 million, including $85.8 million SGF for the Spring Human Services Consensus Caseload. At the top of page 4, for Department for Children and Families, you adopted GBA number 3, item 1, to delete $3.5 million, including the addition of $129,000 SGF for the Spring Human Services Consensus Caseload. For the Board of Regents, you added $10 million all SGF for the passage of the Kansas Promise Scholarship Act in HB 2064. You added $215,000 all SGF and reappropriation language for the tuition waiver fund associated with passage of HB 2021. And you added language to provide that the Career Technical Education Tuition Fund does include those pursuing a high school equivalency credential. For the Department of Corrections, you added language to lapse SGF provided in HB 2007 for the replacement of the adult and juvenile offender management data systems up to $2.1 million if federal funds are available for that purpose. For the Kansas Bureau of Investigations, you added $30,000 all SGF for the systems maintenance and upkeep for scrap metal database repository. You adopted GBA number 3, item 5, to add $86,000 all SGF for increased telecommunication costs. For the Department of Agriculture, you did not adopt GBA number 3, item 15, and thereby deleted $500,000 all SGF and not establish an animal facilities inspection program as an independent division. For the Department of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism, you added $50,000 all from the Wildlife Fee Fund to combat aquatic nuisance species. And the last item, Department of Transportation, you added $26,000 all from the State Highway Fund for Memorial Highway and sign designations in HB 2247.
Thank you, Amy. Any questions? Senator Petty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back to the, on the page 3, the Board of Indigent Defense Services, I know you have that we added the language limiting the hourly rate for assigned counsel to $100 per hour for FY 2022. I'm wondering about the funding.
Senator McGinn.
So you're wondering about the funding?
Yes. Yeah. we've upped it from $80 to $100 per hour, but I'm not sure where the funding for that is reflected.
Oh, I see.
Amy?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. If I might, I'll have Martin DeBoer come up and answer that.
Mark?
Good morning. Could you restate the question?
Sure, Martin. Under the Board of Indigent Defense Services, we added language to limit the hourly rate for assigned counsel to $100 per hour for starting in 2022. It does say contingent upon HB 2363 not being signed into law. I don't know what happened offhand, what happened to HB 2363.
Yes, that bill is currently sitting below the line.
Okay. Okay, so the question was about the funding.
Okay, so for the funding portion, my apologies. It is part of their enhancement request, which is an item that you marked to come back to review. So if you have the memo, on that one? Okay.
We just
So-
haven't got that far yet.
Just haven't got that
That's the
far.
next item up, so.
All right, so-
Maybe we'll just wait and you can answer it when we get to it.
Sounds good.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, well, we're going to go through the items that we had for consideration. We'll start out with the COVID-19 federal relief funds. Merle Riedel. We had requested details on communication regarding the publication of federal guidance for the Treasury Department. They don't have anything additional today, but I guess as if there is additional guidance or they find it, we'll either call a meeting or email it or something. Senator Petty.
So didn't we get, I mean, isn't there some additional information out there concerning when it comes to K-12 and higher ed and maintenance of effort?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Afternoon, Merle.
Merle Riedel, Legislative Research. And I just wanted to provide the group, I apologize if I missed a question as I was walking over here. One of the follow-up items was to provide this group any updates related to some of the federal guidance for these federal relief funds. I can confirm, just checked earlier today, there is no additional guidance to share with these members today. So if you'll remember, there was $1.62 billion for state government. It's not totally clear exactly how those funds are intended to be expended yet. And unfortunately, I don't have additional guidance. The Treasurer has not provided that.
Okay, that's what I thought. We had nothing new today. Any other questions? Thank you, Merle. As far as the maintenance effort, yeah, we did get a memo, and it's some point in time we'll have to figure out how we're going to handle that. But I think right now we don't know how we're going to handle it. There's an option for asking for a waiver, which we was told the other day. I think we were all, discussing that last week. And there is some options there as far as that, and I think staff is trying to find any other options that might be available. If not, we're just going to have to pay it. I mean, we can't jeopardize the federal dollars by not. Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when you say just pay it. So I thought, I thought there was some clarification here about the fact that the K-12 and higher ed of federal funds under the new American Rescue Act are tied together when it comes to maintenance of effort. So we would then be talking about, well, we don't have a K-12 budget, but we have been underfunding in higher ed, so this made it clear that we would have to do something in that area. Is that correct?
That is correct. And part of the problem is last year, with the CARES or whatever it was, the governor used some of that in place of SGF, which is what we've been talking about looking at again this year. Anytime we can use federal dollars and we want to use them, they're coming back to haunt us and making that maintenance effort even worse than it would have been. So that's the issues we run into. But, you know, at this point in time, we don't have any answers.
Thank you. I just think it's important to keep in mind that we're not just talking higher ed, we're talking about that K-12 and higher ed, that they are locked together when it comes to that issue.
You are correct. And K-12, we have no issues. It's more than funded on the K-12 side. The issue is just higher ed that's not meeting the maintenance of effort.
You're correct, and I think K-12 would be, we would be adequate, but we don't have anything in our budget this year, so we still have that issue on the table.
Right, and that budget's in education, so that's where it's at. Okay, next item we have is tobacco settlement revenue estimates. And we have Megan Leopold. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Generally, these estimates would be included in the omnibus memo, but the timing of the receipt was a little later this year, so I'm just going to provide a brief update. The consensus, the informal consensus team met on April 28th, and the projected revenue for 21 is now 59.7 million. That's an increase of about 9.7 million above the fall 2020 estimate. This is generally due to increased purchase of tobacco products during the pandemic. The consensus estimate for fiscal year 22 is 47 million, which is the same amount as was estimated in the fall. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Megan. Any questions on the tobacco settlement? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, next item we have is Kansas Department of Labor, Victoria Potts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item on the list, okay. The committee decided to pass. The committee passed over this bill last week and decided for further discussion. As a reminder, the Department of Labor has requested $9.6 million in state general fund to fund UI system modernization for fiscal year 2022. This committee can choose to appropriate those funds or not, and that's what this item is related to.
Thank you, Victoria. So House Bill 2196, did the House fund this?
They did, yes.
Okay, so if we want to concur and fund it at this point in time, that would be the committee's decision, right?
Sure, you can choose to do that.
So committee, we can either choose to go ahead and add the same funds, or if we don't, then our position would be no funding, and it would be negotiated in conference. Senator Hawk.
I prefer to add the funding in. Thank you.
Senator Kirshen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'd have a notion to go to a conference with it because not pay it at this point. We just got a brand new batch of more unemployment over this couple of weeks we've been off. Like, it isn't getting any better. I mean, I don't, keep adding money and improving, and we got less. So I think I'd vote to hold it off until we can, not completely pay it, but at least we got to make that point that we got to do better. Write it on a piece of paper or something. You can't answer your phone. Anyway, I'm just kind of upset with that whole thing. Thank you.
Other discussion?
Say this is in the House.
Senator McGinn?
The House put this in.
Yes, they've got it in theirs.
And then I guess the other thing is just, I believe we have the new committee that is going to look at these things, or the new,
The council
Victoria?
that was created by 2196?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
and when are they, is that statute or is that registry? And can those individuals start meeting?
So it's my understanding that 2196 required the council to meet within 30 days of the bill becoming law.
The governor signed that.
Correct.
Senator Solendrum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would be in support of Senator Kirshen's comments and position.
Senator Fagg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would be in support of Senator Kirshen's thoughts on this.
Senator McGinn?
We're all sharing our thoughts. I guess I'm fine with moving along that way. And we're all frustrated with this. And that's why I think this council we want to make sure we're going to do it right. I think that's the big deal. So far, we've put money in, and we're still not seeing results. So I think we need to rebuild the system, but I think we need to understand how it's going to get rebuilt so we're not back here again.
Senator Hawk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm reading this over, and it looks like that the amount requested is $27.8 million from federal funds, and well, I don't know if I'm reading that right. Victoria can tell me, but anyway, to draw down the federal funds, that $9.6 million is state general funds, and we get, it looks like, $18.9 million. So I'd hate to jeopardize that, my thought might be, if we want to make a statement, maybe we ought to put a dollar amount in, 2 million, 4 million, 6 million, and then that brings it to conference and but I don't think we want, with the kind of problems we're having, not to take advantage of the federal funds available to do modernization. And I'm assuming that council would like to have some funds to oversee to make sure they get spent properly. That's my thinking.
Victoria, a question. In the new federal funds, didn't it say something in there, we could use this for the computer system?
Sure. So as part of the American Rescue Act, the U.S. Department of Labor did receive $2 billion that says could be appropriated to states for modernization projects. But at this time, we don't know how much of that $2 billion will be allocated to states or how much Kansas could apply for. We just don't know at this time.
So what's the consensus then? Do we want to just, I think the majority is going with Senator Kirshen. Senator Petty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And isn't this 9.6 that the House did put in, that's a portion of the total costs of 46.7 that the department estimated that it would cost to deploy a new system?
That's correct. That's just the state general fund portion. The rest would be special revenue funds and federal funds.
And it seems like when we were here last, that the department had put out RFPs for new, are those, do you know anything about that? Have they gotten any of those back or not?
It closes on May 3rd, which is today. The RFP period is now closed, so the review process will begin.
So we Yeah, I guess we did have kind of a conversation about that, when that would be back. So this 9.6 is just the SGF portion, that the others is made up from the special revenue fund, and now it says and federal funds. Does that mean and other federal funds, or and the potential of the American Rescue Act federal funds?
Other federal funds, that they have not considered the possibility of American Rescue Plan in this number, or in this breakout, I should say.
That could be, although we don't, of that 2 billion, we don't know how the feds are going to handle that. Is that correct?
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, Senator Hawk?
I just want to make sure that Senator Kirshen doesn't intend for us not to pull down whatever funds we might be able to get, be they through ARPA or other federal funds to do modernization. I understand your frustration.
Senator Kirshen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I cooperate with the federal money, but it just seems like it's just too easy. Federal money, well, we're going to spend some more money. It's time to say no. People they call and they're desperate. I just got too tired of it. I said, maybe take the money away from them, try that for size. So anyway, that's enough.
Senator Saltrop?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think some of the frustration is that we don't know that we've got enough guidance yet to clarify this issue to our satisfaction. So I think we've got a couple options. We can either wait till sine die, if we have a vehicle, to finalize this and run it through. But perhaps more likely, we could turn it over to the State Finance Council and allow them to take the time to get the necessary guidance from research and others so that they can make sure there's an appropriate application of funds and drawing down on federal and, the final form and formula to put the unemployment system into play. Just a couple options.
Senator McGinn?
So are you saying put it in, but subject to State Finance Council review, and if I'm going in the right direction, I would like them to review it after the new council reviews it?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, yes, that's
Senator
correct. It would give us some additional time to get guidance, again, to make sure that, we've got the right system in place, we're getting applicable federal funds and the right dollar amount, we put in the right amount to draw those down. It just gives us a little bit more time, and as I understand, we're still looking for additional guidance from the feds.
So committee and Senator Kirshen, would that suffice you as far as we put the language in? Okay, everybody okay with that? Senator Petty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That does sound reasonable. So if I'm hearing correctly, is that we're going to kind of concur with the House, but we're also wanting to make sure that if we can supplant with federal funds, we're going to do that. Is that correct?
Senator Saltram?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. That's correct. And again, upon receipt of adequate guidance, then we would know better. The State Finance Council could address this and get the best program that we can get based on federal funding and what we're going to have to put in it for ourselves.
Senator Petty?
I wholly support the idea of supplanting with federal funds. However, since there is an RFP out and Victoria told us the closing date was today, although from the other day, I had down May 7th, so I don't know which it is, if it's 3rd or the 7th. So I thought that when we met earlier, that we had a similar discussion about looking over this, but I don't think we're not really talking about another RFP. It would just be looking at the decisions that were made once the results come back from this RFP and from the Department of Labor and their selection. Is that correct?
Senator Solmstrom.
That would be correct, yes. Allowing some additional time to get guidance, review the RFP, make sure that we've got adequate funds in there to draw down the necessary Fed funds to put the best program together. I don't think either side of the aisle wants to have this continue. And as Senator Kirshen's indicated, we're all quite frustrated on the amount of time and money it's taken so far. So we would like to get this to a conclusion. But I don't know that we're ready to make a final decision today. So that'd be my suggestion.
Everyone okay with that, putting the language in? Senator Kirshen, that work for you? Okay. If we're all in agreement, then that's what we'll, okay. Got that, Amy? Okay. Thank you, Victoria. Next, we'll have the Attorney General, Gabrielle Hall.
Good afternoon, committee. On your list, it does include HB 2114. That was a mistake on my part. The committee has taken a position on this item, so we can move forward to HB 2079. For your reference, on the yellow packet you received the other day, that bill does appear on page 3. This bill, again, is in conference committee. It's been decided upon. The committee of the whole is just waiting to take action on that conference committee report. The Senate committee recommended the addition of expenditures for the Charitable Organizations and Solicitation Act, but the fund was not appropriated for that purpose, and the committee did not indicate its position on the addition of the 1 FTE position for that portion. And Mr. Chair, I can pause there. This bill does have several parts. I can go through them all and pause at the end, or I could pause now.
Why don't you go through it, and then we'll take questions.
Additionally, the committee recommended the addition of a transfer from the Kansas Fights Addiction Fund to the Prescription Monitoring Program Fund, but did not appropriate the Kansas Fights Addiction Fund or the municipality's Fights Addiction Fund for that transfer. And lastly, regarding the human trafficking notices, the committee did not indicate if expenditures should be made from SGF for this purpose.
Questions for Gabrielle? Senator Petty.
On the Charitable Organization and Solicitation Act, so I'm looking at our actions from a week ago or whenever, and it's listed that we added that money.
Yes, so Mr. Chair, the money was added. The fund was not appropriated. They requested the appropriation of a new no-limit fund to collect the fees under that act. And there was also a request for 1 FTE position. So those 2 items weren't taken action upon, but you did add the expenditures.
Could you remind us why they needed that no-limit fund?
Sure. So this was a program under the Secretary of State's office that is transferring to the Attorney General. This fund exists under the Secretary of State to collect fees from charitable organizations and solicitors. The fund does not exist under the Attorney General's office for them to collect those fees and remit them to the Treasury.
And is it a no-limit fund under the Secretary of State?
It is.
I thank you. I am somewhat concerned about adding another position. We have actually added, I think, at least 3 new positions to the Attorney General's office in this budget.
Gabrielle, do you know?
I can check what the total FTE position add was for the Attorney General. The specific FTE position request for this portion is the 1 FTE position that's currently running this program in the Secretary of State's office. The Attorney General asked for that position to basically transfer to their office. So that was the rationale. We could definitely check how many FTE positions total were added, though.
Thank you. So we're just transferring from department to department. Okay. Agency to agency. Any other questions? committee, we'd need to add the FTE and the funding. Everybody okay with that, or? Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do just want to clarify. So, Gabrielle, are you saying that there will be a corresponding reduction of a 1.0 FTE in the Secretary of State's office?
We can look into what the total number of FTEs for the Secretary of State's office will be. That position will no longer need to be filled for that purpose, though, so they will have an empty FTE position.
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we have a description of what this person does in the office? Is there a narrative on that? Or am I missing it?
Yeah, I can definitely get that for you. So broadly, the position would oversee the, this is a fee that the Attorney General Office would collect for charitable organizations and solicitations. So broadly, it would be a position to oversee the transfer of this act. We could definitely get some more information on what specifically they would do, though.
Senator Clays.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that, and then where the duties were previously, because if I'm not mistaken, all this did was move it from the Secretary of State to the Attorney General, so there shouldn't really be does that person just change agencies, or how does that work? I'm kind of curious to see how that operates. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Petty.
I have a question on the next part, so if you want to finish up with this.
Okay. Any other questions on this part here? Are we all thinking to add the FTE in the funding transferred? Anyone against adding this funding and transfer? And the House does have this position also, right?
The House actually requested to review this item this week, so they have not taken it.
They haven't, so. I mean, if we're moving this from the Secretary of State's to the Attorney General's, I think we need to make sure we have the funding, so if everyone's okay with that. Okay, all right, we'll add that then and transfer it. Got it, Amy? Okay. Gabrielle, did you have anything else? Thank you. Oh, Senator Petty had a question.
So it was the last part that you had spoken about with concerning the Kansas Fight Addiction Fund. Could you mention that again exactly?
Sure. So for that portion of the bill, the Attorney General requested the appropriation of 2 no-limit funds to receive the opioid litigation money for Kansas Fights Addiction and then for the municipalities. The portion we wanted to draw your attention to is that language was added for the prescription monitoring program under the Board of Pharmacy to receive a transfer from the Kansas Fights Addiction Act fund, but that fund wasn't appropriated in the Attorney General's office. So there's a transfer, but that fund wasn't created for the transfer.
So that's no additional cost, it's just.
Correct.
So I see on the language you have here about we did not appropriate the Kansas Fight Addiction Fund for the Municipality Fight Addiction Fund. I think it is important that we put that in place. Otherwise, as I recall that there's 2 funds there, one's that the municipalities join onto, other one, if they're not joined onto, then they come out of this other fund. Is that correct?
The bill language includes the Kansas Fights Addiction Act, which will receive 75% of the state opioid litigation money, and that's for broader state-related substance abuse response. The Municipalities Fights Addiction Act was for those municipalities that may have legal fees or for their programs their grant programs to do substance abuse response. So they would receive 25% of that money.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would hope we would follow through with this recommendation.
Right, committee, everyone okay with making sure we have the funding source for the monitoring of the prescription program? Everyone good with that? Okay, we'll make sure that's added. Any other questions? Gabrielle, thank you. Next item we have is the Office of Administration, Administrative Hearings, Elena Reuter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Elena Rutter, and I'm the fiscal analyst for the Office of Administrative Hearings. And the item for review is the possible addition of funding for salary increases for the administrative law judges and the director of administrative hearings, who's also an administrative law judge. And the total amount would be $80,379, and this would all come from the Administrative Hearings Office Fund. And I can provide more detail if you would like, or...
Is that like fee funds?
Yes, yeah. The Office of Administrative Hearings is an off-budget agency, so all of the money paid to the Office of Administrative Hearings comes from other state agencies who utilize its services, which is administrative hearings.
What's the committee's will on this one? $80,000 from fee funds. Is anybody against this? We all in agreement, we want to go ahead and add the 80,000? Okay. Got it, Amy?
That was my only item.
Elena, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item we have is the state employee pay. Dylan Deere.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dylan Deere. I'm with Legislative Research. I just have the state employee pay, the 2.5%. There was a request to review that this week, and so I can review the information that was in the governor's recommendation if you like.
No, that's fine. Dylan, the House has this in theirs, correct?
They do. They have it slightly modified. So what they did is they dropped it to 11.8 and removed judges and justices and employees of the judicial branch from the 2.5% that's here, and did a separate action for the judicial branch as part of their pay plan.
Okay. And we discussed this Tuesday to length, and I think on Tuesday the consensus of the committee was to not recommend these at this time. That pretty much what the discussion was Tuesday? I know there was at least 5 that spoke against it. And so I think maybe send them again.
I strongly support state employee pay. We're hearing, and for the courts as well, they're having problems with getting clerks. Our budget is in pretty good shape, and I'm not going to go into everything I went to last week. So I would just, if it's possible, I would like to just be recorded that I do not agree with not giving the state employees a 2.5% raise. Thank you.
Senator Hawk.
I fall in that same camp as we did in the discussion last week. So I certainly would hope we would go on to conference committee and listen to the House's arguments on that.
Senator Petty.
I concur with both of them.
Okay. Senator Salentrop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would emphasize that I'd be in full support of some additional compensation to the judiciary court system for those clerical persons that are so badly needed. To what degree, I'm not sure I am ready to make a recommendation. I would fall in the line somewhere in the 2% range. I would like to see, if we hold our position and not fund the balance of the state employees, I would like to see a separate issue addressed for those persons that are working in our judicial system to realize some additional compensation.
Okay. Other discussion? Senator McGinn.
Dylan, I don't know if you have this, but, you know, we've tried to help the clerks and over the years. And can you tell me roughly in the last 8 years, how many times they've received a raise?
I would hesitate to guess. There has been multiple pay adjustments like you have mentioned, and some of them have stretched over multiple years. So one action actually happened over a couple different years, but we can put something together for you real quick.
Was curious as we look at that with the overall pay employee system. Thank you.
Senator Hawk.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that bothers me without us looking, if the majority, not the consensus, but the majority of the Ways and Means does not want to look at state employee pay, but as we've changed our system, we did have a market study, and we've had several requests from different areas where we've agreed to give certain agencies increases in pay, particularly unclassified, or allowed that to happen. So essentially, with us not doing this, I don't know that we're being consistent in the way we're treating state employee pay. And I certainly want to go along with what the House did in terms of looking at the judicial branch separately from the state employee plan. But I'm still in favor of trying to meet those needs that our employees have that have given service through a really difficult period of time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me. Any other comments? Okay, I think we'll leave the position then that we will negotiate with the House and on the pay raises for the state employees and the judicial branch, and we'll go from there, and we'll get the additional information that Senator McGinn wanted on what raises have been available and for the clerical, and then we'll call another committee meeting if we need to and see where everyone's at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we're supposed to have conference in here, Stephen. So I think what we'll do, we'll adjourn right now, and then committee, we'll have another meeting, later this afternoon. I'll announce it on the floor. Thank you.